Hello everyone, Melody Season Wrestlers here, and today we're going to get us on What If I Wrote The Flash Season 8 Part 1. This is just for graphic novel the first two graphic novels of the season, which would be graphic novel number 5 and number 6. Now, let's first start with graphic novel number 5 for the first one of the season. So basically, this graphic novel number 5 is just 3 episodes. However, something you should know: this graphic novel, actually does, like each graphic novel sets up the next and the main story. So these 3 episodes do actually set up the entire story. So let's start with the first one. Now, let's first talk about the big changes. Number 1, Eobard Dawn is not present in any of these graphic novels. He's not. Eobard Dawn will have no presence in any graphic novel, though he does get mentioned a lot in this one specifically. So the first graphic novel of the season, Eobard Dawn does get mentioned a lot, just doesn't get, just gets mentioned a lot. Yeah. Yeah. And 2, these graphic novels are very dark and disturbing, especially this one because of the villain. Alright, so the main villain for the first graphic novel of the season is Thomas Richards. Now, in the Walking Dead comics, Thomas Richards is a serial killer who essentially decapitates women. Now, that alone sounds pretty dark. And here's the thing. So let's first talk about how Thomas's character would be portrayed on The Flash. So basically, Thomas is a serial killer in Central City who decapitates young women. And in the crimes he's done in the comics include decapitating 2 young children, basically Susie and Rachel Green in the comics. 2 young twins who die in the prison arc. Basically Thomas just decapitates them, like I'm showing you right now. That's the kind of crimes he's done in the comics, and that's the same crimes he's going to be doing for this graphic novel. So in the first episode, Barry's struggling to figure out who this graphic novel is. Well, in the meanwhile, we are shown how Thomas Richards actually commits the crime, and how the next day Barry shows up, finds nothing. Other than the fact that Barry now knows there's a serial killer in town. The second episode, Barry learns of Thomas Richards. In this one, you get some flashbacks to his childhood, where, essentially speaking, Thomas had a bad childhood, where he grew up with a sister, and his mom and his mother treated him very bad, etc. And that kind of foreshadowed him coming later on, saying why he hates women, because he was treated by bad. So in this one, we also learned that Thomas really did change from the particle accelerator when that exploded back in season 1. Back in season 1, Thomas began believing that he's in a zombie apocalypse. Obviously a twist on The Walking Dead, because Thomas Richards is from The Walking Dead. So basically, Thomas Richards then believed he's in a zombie apocalypse when the particle accelerator exploded. He believes metas are zombies, and the people who are fighting metas like the Flash are just ordinary people. So because of that, Thomas Richards clearly went insane, and that's why he became the serial killer he is in season 8. Now, Now, in episode 3 is when we first get the first confrontation and the last confrontation for the graphic novel between Barry Allen and Thomas Richards. Basically, what happens is that Barry Allen tries to tell Thomas about how the more women he kills, the more he is done. Because obviously Barry has to talk to him because as Barry finds out that Thomas is not ordinary, and he tries to explain that not all women are bad. Just the ones that he grew up with, or the ones that he lived with, were just not that good. In fact, Barry even mentions his own mom, how his mother died at the hands of Reverse Flash, and how he saw his daughter die at the hands of Eobard Dawn again. However, this is when Thomas Richards straight up says that Barry Allen is the cause of the zombie apocalypse, and how he changed my life. And this is where Barry gets a little confused. And he's wondering, zombie apocalypse, what is this guy talking about? But in reality, he's talking about a particle accelerator. Because of that, Barry obviously stops Thomas Richards, but then because of what Thomas says, Central City is a little now wondering, did Barry Allen actually create the particle accelerator? In fact, people actually began accusing him of it. And the thing is, Barry Allen then later gets fired from his job as well. This kind of leads into the next graphic novel, which is the Negan and the Savior storyline. Basically, in episode 4, Barry Allen is still wondering what Thomas Richards was saying about how Barry Allen caused the particle accelerator or the zombie apocalypse, essentially. In fact, Barry's on it for so long to a point that he doesn't even know what he's doing. However, because of that, it puts a lot of stress on Barry Allen. However, things go from bad to automatically worse as then Barry Allen in his apartment goes and watches some TV, but then Chester says, hey, go on to the news, and this is when he sees the United States President order the Flash is a threat to the world. And that's when Barry starts going a little insane and here's the thing, and that's when he also learns that the United States has also been working with the other countries. Now in the Flash comics, Barry Allen does deal with Soviet speedsters. So basically, this would be like a ally, this would be like the Flash going up against the United States and Russia. Yeah. And also Scotland as well. Also majority of South America, the vast majority of South America as well as the United Kingdom as well. And also South Africa. Basically, think of the country, nation, nationality some of the villains are. You have Scotland with Evan McCulloch. You have the Soviet speedsters I think was it the Red Trinity, I believe? But it's the one where one of the female, I'm pretty sure there was a Soviet Flash team back in the comics where there was these two males and one female. The female later becomes a member of Savitar's cult in the comics. She's known as Christina, or Lady Flash in the comics, so I just forgot. So that's the team I'm talking about. So yeah, it would be United States, Scotland, Russia, and South America, and South Africa, as well as some of the other countries that some of the villains are from the Flash as well. Now, this puts a lot of stress on Barry because now he's considered to be like the only villain. And this puts him on a lot of stress. Right, but when Barry Allen goes to Star Labs, he notices that the way to get into Star Labs is open. And so Barry Allen obviously grabs one of his cold or flamethrower guns just to make sure that everyone is safe. But that's when he gets attacked by some people. And this is when we're introduced to Negan, one of the main villains of the season. So basically, Negan is forcing Team Flash to give half of their supplies because here's the thing, the Saviors or Negan knows Barry Allen is the Flash, and because of that, he's giving half their supplies, or getting half their supplies, for more protection of his secret identity. Meaning, if Barry Allen doesn't agree to this, Negan will reveal Barry's identity. So basically, Barry's now put on even more stress. Because of that quickly Barry finds it really hard for him to, very repetitive, but also at the same time very stressful because you gotta do the same thing over and over and over again. So yeah. Episode 5. Now this is a more controversial episode because of the fact that this is more of a bottle episode. Now what I'm saying is that the reason why I say it's a bottle episode is because this half of the episode takes place at a party. Now I'm sure some of you guys might be thinking, wow, a party. This sounds worse than season 7. Well, actually, no. Because here's the thing. Barry's so stressed about the whole Saviors coming in, revealing his identity, and giving up half their supplies to his Barry's so stressed about that. So obviously he needed some time off. Saying, hey, we're gonna be out. Basically what Team Flash does that the day after, around Christmas, where Negan says they can have a little bit of some rest for a few days, is Barry decides to gets invited to a party, and he invites his friends there. Yep. So you have Chilblain there, Dion, Alexa, Bashir. They're all having a great time. Now this is when something very interesting happens, and actually just sets up more another graphic novel later on. That's where Barry meets an old lover of his in high school, Jesse Anderson, the abused wife of Pete Anderson. Pete is one of the main villains of the season, and a main villain for a different graphic novel later on. Basically, Barry Allen comes into a party, but he's suspicious of Pete. This is due to the fact that Jessie seems very depressed, and her son Ron has a black eye. This kind of raises Barry Allen's suspicions that maybe Pete is a bad father, but obviously he tried to just not worry about it. But that's when Barry decides to talk with Jesse after years. And that's where Jesse tells Barry that Pete is very bad with them. And he abuses them. However, what happens next is that Pete dresses up as the Grinch from Dr. Seuss, basically the Grinch who stole Christmas. And does it for fun, as well as he also asks Barry Allen to sing. Where Barry very coldly says yes, implying that Pete should, this is kind of where Pete starts realizing maybe Barry Allen probably finds out. And obviously, sorry, basically later on, when Barry and Pete interact, basically Pete tells about Pete tells Barry about like all the times about the time Barry and Jesse were dating, which was like during their high school years, and how and also Pete says how he's like a doctor, he's the Central City's doctor, one of the doctors at the very least. But obviously Barry Allen later on is not like buying to his crap, even though that actually is true. Pete is a doctor in the story. Yeah. But when Pete obviously asks Barry to like sing again, this is where something very intriguing happens. Now, granted, now you might think, wouldn't Joe and Barry and Allegra be the ones who know about Pete a little more often? Because they deal with people like Pete all the time. Yeah, but I'd say Barry Allen is the more likely to figure out, because remember, back in the season, in this version, not my version, like in the Black Deathstorm arc, in the Deathstorm arc, nobody believed Barry Allen when he believed that the hotness was telling the truth. So same thing here. And here's the thing. In the Walking Dead comics, a lot of people believe he was an ordinary guy. The only people that actually knew about his real behavior were Rick Grimes and Douglas Monroe in the comics. Even in the TV show, the same thing happens, except a little more. Same thing here. Barry Allen doesn't really believe Pete's story, and this is where the two actually get into a fight. Basically what happens was that Pete and Barry get into a fight, which results in a stalemate as the fight gets breaking up. Now, the reason this is important later on is because literally a few episodes later, Barry kind of starts acting a lot like Pete. And at the end of the fight, Pete throws a beer bottle at Barry Allen's face. And that's when Pete says, "Yeah, that's what you get, Flash." Basically implying that Pete is one of the very few people that actually figure out Barry Allen's secret identity as the Flash. And we're gonna find out later on in the next episode as to how he figured out. So in the next episode, we learn that Pete was changed by the particle accelerator, and like Thomas Richards, believe he's in a zombie apocalypse. Meaning, like the more people the more people Meadows put in the hospitals, it's like he's seeing the more people there are in the hospital, the more he has to you know how in the Walking Dead comics and show they always have to put down people before they reanimate? That's kind of what he did in this. He had to put down people who were hurt by Meadows. So yeah, he was not a good doctor at all. And because of that, when he came home, he began drinking a lot, like he does in the comics. However, because of that, Pete later on becomes a little bit violent towards his family. And so because of a lot of stress on Barry, and also the whole Barry Allen being the Flash being the right now, Thomas Richards and Pete are for some reason believe they're in a zombie apocalypse, and there's some of the people who he's now worried know he is the Flash. Barry is on a lot of stress, and he becomes more like Pete later on. He goes through drugs and alcohol just to cope with it, and he becomes violent at times. Yeah, and also not to mention the Savior arc, which was possibly the most stressful thing for Barry Allen, because you literally have to deal with a lot of things. And because of that, Barry's put on a lot of stress. We have 3 episodes left, as that was the 6th episode, as Barry becomes more like Pete Anderson. Episode 7, Barry Allen talks with Thomas Richards as to what he like in Arkham Asylum. He talks about him, about the stuff that he said in the 1st and 3rd episode of the season. And that's when Thomas Richards just says Barry Allen is the cause of the zombie apocalypse again. And that's when Barry Allen literally just flats out says, "Tell me what you mean by that." Because here's the thing, Thomas Richards is not being honest with him. Thomas Richards is not being as honest with Barry Allen as Barry Allen hopes he would. Because here's the thing, when someone says you are the cause of the zombie apocalypse, Barry's now a little concerned for what he's talking about. Because honestly, Barry believes it's just nonsense, but he for some reason feels like it's something there. However, it's when he realizes something is not right. Now, there's no time travel involved, there's no timeline change, no reverse flashpoint, though Barry starts believing maybe someone changed the timeline, but however, later on Barry finds out nothing happened to the timeline. Barry asks Dion to ask if has there been any changes to this timeline specifically? Like, is there anything that's wrong with time? And it turns out Dion says that there is no timeline changes, nothing happened. Because of that, now he got Barry a little concerned on what Thomas Richards is talking about. Barry starts believing that maybe what Thomas Richards is saying is that he believes that Barry Allen, is the cause of the particle accelerator. Now, here's the thing. Because the Flash and the Reverse, because Reverse Flash is technically the one responsible for the particle accelerator, obviously some people are saying it's Barry Allen, because later on in season 2, Barry Allen buys Star Labs. However, Thomas believes that Barry Allen was already in charge of Star Labs, and because of that, Barry Allen was the one responsible for the particle accelerator. Because of that, Barry Allen actually starts wondering if what Thomas is saying is just nonsense, or is he actually being real? In episode 8, we learn more about Barry and Jesse's relationship, and it turns out that, well, Barry was never bad with Jesse. They had a lot of problems in their relationship. They had a lot of arguments, essentially. Barry Allen and Jesse actually were just a bad match, and the relationship was very brief. So, and obviously later on, Barry seems much happier with Iris. Jesse's way happier with Pete, etc. So in episode 8. But episode 9 is when we get some real tensions between Team Flash and the Saviors. Basically what happens is that Negan comes in, and obviously Team Flash is ready. And obviously they're getting more supplies for them, like more medical supplies, more like medicine. However, that's when a friend of Barry Allen's from CCPD comes in and tries to charging Negan with breaking and entering and stealing. That's when Barry Allen comes in, and that's when after that Negan literally seals Barry Allen's friend. And so this is just a random cop, so it's not important to the storyline. That's when Barry and Dawn talk. Oh no, but not Barry and Dawn. Barry and Negan, sorry. Have a conversation. And that's when Negan threatens to do even worse to end to Barry or his friends if they don't contemplate more supplies, putting Barry on an even bigger amount of stress. And that is the first two graphic novels. You see what I mean? What I mean by the first graphic novel of the season does actually play into the second one. Yeah. So episode 10 would definitely be more of the Barry Allen versus government storyline, which is technically the main storyline of the season. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the first two graphic novels. Tell me what you think of these versions. This version of the Flash season 8. Do you think it's actually better than the main one that we're currently getting, or do you think it's needs some more improvements, or are you just not interested in it? Let me know down below. And as always, I'll see you next time. Goodbye.